Gay people, am I right? Trans people, am I right? Furries, am I right? Transcending trauma through mutual understanding and love. What? T for T is a romance between trans people. Are they gay, lesbian, straight? It doesn't really matter. As long as they both decided enough was enough and the cis life was not for them, they're T for T, baby. Every day, it feels like there's some random guy on Twitter saying some real transphobic stuff and being a dingus. Trans romance, in all honesty, is a way to run away from all that stuff. Hello everyone, I'm Terry's friend doing a voiceover for him because he didn't want to show his voice in a public YouTube video. I'm Soggymentos, I stream on Twitch, and post art on Twitter. Today, I wanted to tell you about my, Terry's, favorite game that genuinely changed his life, that being Lookouts. Lookouts was released in 2022, and the description on the itch.io page pretty much says it all. A visual novel about two gay trans-masked cowboys in the Old West, finding refuge in each other and hope for a better life. The two main characters, Robin and Joseph, are both lookouts for their respective gangs, scouting out a local mining town named Clemency because there's been rumors of gold. However, instead of finding gold, they find gay people! Ah! The game opens on a scene of Robin's gang, led by Curly Wolf. His name is cowboy slang for dangerous man. They talk about the nearby mining town striking a new vein of gold and sending Robin to scout out Clemency, but not before taking an opportunity to commit transphobia. The lookout will go early in the morning and see what we're up against, but I reckon we can bulldoze this burg and have some fun either way. Make sure to bring us back some juicy details, won't you, tomboy? And so, as morning breaks, he rides off towards the town. He thinks to himself about running away and settling down in peace, about not having microaggressions committed against him. Waxing poetic about being stuck in life, about being an outcast, he comes to a cliff overlooking Clemency, and a rock, and a hawk behind the rock. Holy moly! This here is Joseph, and this here is what we in the biz call a meet cute. It's when two characters meet, but it's some embarrassing, awkward, hostile encounter that's meant as a quick way to give the main couple a reason to interact or know of each other. Common examples include bumping into each other and dropping a pile of paper and books, the boy lead tripping and accidentally assaulting the young girl lead, getting your Spider-Man hands stuck in their Spider-Woman hair, threatening them with a gun because you thought they were gonna rob you, you know, classic stuff. So we have the meet. Where's the cute? Were you trying to sneak up on me, Joseph? Rob me blind where no one else would see? I bet you thought a fellow missing an arm would be easy. No sir, I had no idea you were here till I walked around this here rock. It's not immediately obvious, but this detail right here is what really softens Robin up. Joseph, a stranger at this point, calling Robin sir is what gets him to warm up to Joseph. I know most of you watching this will probably be trans, so you inherently understand the feeling of someone seeing you as passing or otherwise validating your transness. For the three cis people watching, it's fundamentally about having something you worked so hard for be validated or rewarded. Gender-affirming care is expensive. It takes 30 billion years and is hard as hell to get your hands on. All the meanwhile, you kinda just have to deal with not being the type of person you're happy with and having very little to actually remedy that. Sure, you can wear a large hoodie and hide your chest, but there's no actually removing or adding breasts until you've talked to a therapist for about 60 years. Passing isn't easy, and for someone to clock you as male or female or just be confused can fill your heart with the gender euphoria you've desperately needed for so long. Say, why do you keep calling me sir? I ain't your boss. You just that much of a polite suck-up? Costs nothing to be kind on the trail, I found. What do most call you then? Ah. You thought this might come up. Of course. You're surprised it took this long for him to ask about who you are. What you are. Most would say tomboy, I think. Or other things I wouldn't repeat in such polite company. And what would you call yourself? The question takes you by surprise, something no one else had asked you. I'd call myself a man. Huh, is that so? You'd better be getting on your horse right now and riding back than staying another second around this stranger. How funny, I guess we're in the same boat if I'm picking up what you're putting down. Might say the guys at the camp don't use shove the queer to talk about money. This dynamic happens a ton in Lookouts. Robin, often mistreated by his gang, comes to expect the worst response from people, because the worst is what he usually gets, but is surprised by Joseph doing something sweet and charming instead. It's a cute way for Robin to break out of his anxieties formed through trauma. Joseph gets similar characterization here. Like Robin, it's implied his gang is also abusive/transphobic towards him, but learned to talk his way out of things and used his interpersonal skills to quell anger before they do anything too awful towards him. A common way the two are characterized are by the coping methods, survival tactics, trauma responses, etc. to their abusive environments. Robin is avoidant, preferring to run and simply interact with Curly Wolf as little as possible. His avoidance results in a silent and short-spoken man whose social awareness is specifically fine-tuned for Curly only. Robin can accidentally make comments others perceive as rude, but will know the minutiae of how to act around Curly Wolf. "You know how things work around here, don't you, tomboy?" "Yes." Curly grabbed a handful of your poncho, pulling you forward, stumbling before shoving you off your feet and onto your back. You learned how to take a fall by now. You didn't scramble, you just let yourself lay in the dirt for a moment, waiting. "Get up!" You pressed your hand to the ground and got up. Not too fast, not too slow. He prefers to let things blow over, hoping that things don't escalate. Similarly, Joseph tries to be as polite and as friendly as possible to avoid any ire aimed his way. If he behaves and sucks up to all the other guys, he can avoid giving them a reason to mess with him. But obviously, that's not how bad people operate. Given that he actually does interact with the other guys at camp instead of just secluding himself like Robin, he's a lot more socially tuned in and charming. The differences and similarities between how they cope are how they bond throughout the game. Robin warming up to Joseph, and Joseph showing his love to Robin melts my heart so much. Continuing on their quest to find gold, they approach the town, only to be welcomed by the sheriff. They're an old-ass lizard with a cane. They just give the couple, duo, a quick welcome to Clemency, all friendly-like. Robin and Joseph get to planning how to find the gold. They'd noticed the lack of banks or actual mine shafts, even when they were approaching from afar. The game gives you 3 choices on where you want to explore first: the saloon, the town hall, and the sheriff's office. You can go through them in any order, but the story is definitely most effective if you go in order from top to bottom. The saloon is run by Bartholomew, or Bart, or Bart Ender. He's a little silly Billy. His story is simpler than the others, which is why I recommend it first. He runs from home with his fiancée, now husband, under dreams of making a fortune through gold mining in the West as a miner. He first arrives at the scene of Sheriff kicking out all the miners in the town. He's almost shooed away too, but Sheriff relents when they realize Bartholomew wasn't the troublemaking type. The obvious implication being that the other miners were. This section also gives massive first date vibes for Robin and Joseph. They both get drinks, make some small talk, and get to know each other. Joseph even pays for Robin's beer, which is like, okay, buddy. Next is the town hall, which is a repurposed church building. Here we meet Jacob. The artist thought they were named Elijah during development, and honestly it fits more. He is the religious character. He first pilgrimaged from Philly to Cali to this town to preach Quakerism values of peace and equality. The TLDR for Quakerism is that they're a Christian denomination with emphasis on how God's light exists in all people. So there is a special emphasis on loving thy neighbor. Since he's older, he has way more history to tell than Bart Ender. He expands on what we know from Bart, which is that the miners were misbehaving somehow. We get more specifics on what the miners actually did, which was namely settler violence against the indigenous and also normal, non-racist violence towards each other, all over gold. All hope seems lost for Jacob, as the miners simply refuse to listen until the sheriff arrives. Very little makes my blood boil, I'll tell you boys what, but the way those miners talked about those Indians, how happily they told me stories about the way they drove them out, unspeakable things. I dare not and would not repeat to anyone. Then came along Sheriff. Oh, Sheriff. I was a little worried when Sheriff first got assigned to the town that I'd just have another person to fight with, someone with authority on the side of the miners. Instead, I found a kindred spirit, someone who actually listened to me and agreed with me on many things. Very quickly, we became firm friends. Jacob sets the tone for the game to be explicitly anti-racist, which was a goal specifically stated by the dev in the art book because of how inherent it is to the genre. Westerns being based on an era that is only possible by the displacement and death of many of the people who were already living there. I'm not particularly versed in American history, being Canadian. We're still pretty familiar with cultural genocide and disrupting an entire people's way of life over oil. Weird pattern. He also is a setup for Sheriff, where he talks about problems caused, whereas Sheriff talks about the resolution. It's also in character, because he holds the Sheriff in very, very high regard. But, well, In the game files, Jacob has sprites that are only ever used for talking about Sheriff, and I mean, look at him, man. And he talks about Sheriff with such love and adoration, it's honestly the shining part of his character. It's impossible to ignore. This tortoise is a fact. Man, I'm fucking thirsty. Drink this water. Okay. Play Vinged et Un with me. What the fuck? How do you pronounce that? It's French. It's blackjack, but we called it that in old-timey cowboy days. Last but not least, Sheriff. His pronouns are they, them. But no, seriously, they didn't really have the language to describe it back then, but they're non-binary / agender. They were part of the Marshals and got assigned to this town as an officer of the law, but grew to hate their rules and laws, claiming it to be a perversion of justice. Because of that, they named themselves Sheriff, to claim the title for themselves. The story Sheriff tells is the climax for Jacob's story, and acts as an explicit condemnation of the bloody colonialism inherent to Americans manifesting destiny. The same bloody colonialism set up by Jacob. Sometime in the winter, we had a caravan arrive in town. People who had been traveling long across the trail, needing somewhere to stay a spell. Had some to sell as well, furs and such, anything to help get by. Friendly folks. I enjoyed their company. Spent a night drinking with them around their wagons. The miners didn't take kindly to them. That was one week I'll never forget. Constant accusations of stealing and flare-ups, shouting matches almost ending in drawn irons. The miners were so jumpy and owl-headed about the slightest things. 3 days later, a miner turns up dead, stabbed in his sleep. The miners accused one of the traders of doing it, a Mexican fella. Claimed it was his knife that did the deed. I had to arrest him. A tap of somewhat rusted metal bars with the cane rang out into the room. The traders all came to tell me I was wrong, that he'd never do something of the sort. They helped push me in the right direction. I'd already had some suspicion about the miners' claims. A lot of accusations had been flying around the Mexicans and Indians traveling in the caravans. I did a little investigating and found that the miner had been killed by one of his friends, another feud about gold, some stolen or missing, and his so-called friends had killed him for it. The miners wouldn't believe it, insisted the man in the cell was guilty. I wonder if they just couldn't see what I could, see things through my eyes. It felt like a mockery of justice, of everything I cared about. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. Early the next morning, I asked the traders to leave and take their friend with them. The sheriff notices how intently you both are listening, watery eyes flickering between you both. Anyway, that's a lot of blabbing from me already. Long story short, I kicked the miners out, for the better. While Sheriff focuses less on the racism than Jacob, it's still addressed. The reason the Mexican trader is the one being accused is implied to be their race, given that the other native Mexican traders also seemed to face the same treatment. However, Sheriff focuses more on the whole gold plot point. The entire time, Joseph and Robin have been gathering info about the town, info Curly Wolf or Black Vulture would appreciate. Like the miners, Robin, Joseph, and the respective gangs' greed for gold consumes them, leading them down a road of violence against the innocents in the way. They uproot their lives to be richer and richer. But the parallels don't stop there. The townspeople of Clemency are essentially all queer, as we can tell. Bartholomew running away with his husband, Jacob finding solace in the moral authority of Sheriff, and Robin and Joseph finding a rare sense of companionship together. They're people who had lost hope, but found someone to stand strong with. A town of runaways that don't gotta keep running anymore. What is the fate of Robin and Joseph? To run together or apart, surrounded yet alone in their gang? Do they get together? Answers to all this and more if you play the game. Not only would covering and analyzing the game take way too long, I'm already swamped with college and art portfolio prep, but I think it would be a disservice to A, the creators of the game, at Marble Claws on Blue Sky, to just summarize their entire story, but B, to you, to take away such a genuinely amazing story from you. Also, I want to use the outro section to beg Melody Nosurname. Please stream Lookouts, please! I'm going insane. Then along came Sheriff. Oh, Sheriff, I was little. I know. I read it wrong. Okay. I'm going insane. Meow. Meow. Hello. Okay. Ah. Shut the. I'm gonna beat you up. I went too silly at the end. Oh my god. Shut the fuck up. Okay. Shut up. Fuck you, Terry. Me. Rah! Note, Terry add image of Hawk Tua. Trump. I know what the word is. I know what you said.